Welcome to the Unscripted Woman Podcast, the show for women who are done living by the rules and ready to reinvent their lives from the inside out. If you're ready to design your next chapter on your own damn terms, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Unscripted Woman Podcast. My name is Kelly Kingsland. This is the podcast for women who are done living by the script they've been told and ready to write their own. Today, I am so happy, and this is going to be such a great conversation. I'm being joined by Stephanie Dubois. Stephanie is someone who brings depth, clarity, and courage to every conversation that she starts. She's the host of a podcast called Censorship, and that explores the stories of reinvention, resilience, and the many ways we redefine success over the course of a lifetime. Through her work, she creates honest spaces for people to question the norms, embrace complexity, and reconnect with what truly matters. Professionally, Stephanie is an experiential marketing director at a high-tech company where she builds high-performing multicultural teams grounded in trust, collaboration, and human connection. Her perspective on leadership, burnout, midlife transformation, and even the definition of relationships, including ethical non-monogamy, is thoughtful, nuanced, and refreshingly honest. Stephanie, thank you so much for joining me. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you for having me, and I'm very happy to be here and looking forward to it as well.
So let's start from the beginning. You burned out, which then triggered a midlife crisis. So how did that happen? What led up to your burnout?
I love that you plant that as the beginning because was it the end or was it the beginning? It was both, right? So yes, um, working in the event industry, COVID was very brutal on everything we did. I held on tight through 2020, 2021. And then in 2022, I started burning out. And it got to the point where for 3 months straight, I was stuck in my couch, unable to take the smallest action. Like sending an email felt like an Everest. I never thought I could get that low, and yet that's how low I got. It was hard.
Mhm. Yeah, COVID messed with a lot of people, careers. I have friends that are travel agents, and yeah, it was bad. It was bad. So you couldn't get off the couch. What what got you off the couch?
Time, therapy, medication. I decided to just own it. I wasn't doing well, and I sent an email to all of my colleagues saying I need to take care of myself. I'm going to take some time off. Thankfully, my company and the healthcare system in France allowed me to take some time off. Not everybody has that privilege, so I did
Mhm.
feel lucky about that. And said I'm going to find the right doctor and the right treatment to get me back on my feet. It didn't solve anything per se, but it got me out of how deep I was, and allowed me to start breathing again and finding the energy to find what I needed to change in my life to find balance again. That's
That's a,
how it started, was medication.
yeah, it's amazing what it can do for you when you need it.
Yes,
Mhm.
and there is a bit of stigma around it. It's still difficult to admit being on antidepressant or needing that. And I think it's unfortunate because I mean, this is such a cliche, but someone with diabetes, nobody is going to judge them for needing insulin. It's the same thing.
Exactly.
We're at
Exactly.
at the bottom of a pit and you need some help, then get the help. It exists. It does miracles. It really helps and it saves lives. So it's important.
Yeah. It's funny you say that it's cliche when you talk about the medication for diabetes. Years ago, when I was fresh out of school, my degree was in psychology. I started working in mental health, like front lines. I was working in a residence with adult mental health consumers: schizophrenic, manic depressive, dissociative identity disorder, like really hardcore mental health issues. And quite often, when you are suffering from things like that, the medications are so strong, a lot of side effects, and the side effects can be permanent, so it takes a lot for people to maintain their medications. And I remember when people would say, I want to go off of it, I'm experiencing this, I'm experiencing that, I don't want to be on it. And I always used to say to them, if you were a diabetic, would you take your medication every day? It's the exact same thing. It's just that instead of something going on in your blood or what have you, it's going on in your brain. It's
But it is,
chemicals just the same.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And perhaps we judge ourselves the harshest, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've had anybody tell me anything about being on medication. It was mostly internally, oh, do I want to go on medication? I don't know. I struggled with it a little bit at first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it became clear I needed it, so I went for it, and it
Yeah.
did help.
Nice. So you managed to get off the couch, but you got out of event planning. You don't, the company
No,
you're
no,
with.
I went back.
Oh, you went back. Okay.
Went back. I'm still, planning those massive events. That's experiential marketing is really those immersive events for 10, 15,000 people. It's highly stressful. And so it became very clear when I went back to my team. We're all a little bit of, adrenaline junkies to an extent. We like the excitement. It's really, we get the deadline won't move, right? You've booked your
Mm-hmm.
venue, your customers are coming, they bought their tickets. You can't push it by a week because you're not ready. You have to be ready. And um and that means a lot of stress. And then suddenly when the event is done, it goes down. And there is a phenomenon we jokingly call postpartum because it feels that way. And
Yeah.
so, I knew that going back to that, on the one hand, I needed it because I love it. And on
Mm-hmm.
the other hand, I was still fragile. And I wanted to be really, really careful. And one of the first things I came to realize coming out of burnout and going back to work was I had put so much of myself into my job. I loved it, and it had been extremely time consuming and extremely energy consuming, and it had become a very big part of my identity.
Mm-hmm.
I had completely disregarded my own social life. Everything was related to work. All my friends were at work. All my going out and partying was work related. Everything was work related. And my marriage, and we're going to talk about that in a while, I'm sure, my marriage wasn't doing great. So, my family life, I established that I had those three pillars in my life and that I needed them like the 3 feet of a stool to be balanced. One is my family, one is my professional life, and one is my social life, my personal life. My family was partially great because my kids, everything was healthy. My marriage was not great, but also it wasn't bad. So it was somewhere in between. Work was everything. And when I burnt out, suddenly it was like the rug was pulled off from under my feet. And I had no social life to hang on to, not
Mm-hmm.
enough, at least, of a social life. And so coming out of burnout, I did go back to work, but I wanted to rebuild that in a way that would be more balanced and that it would allow me to have my own social life and to focus on my family and my marriage. And that takes some time, but already
Mm-hmm.
realizing that I really needed those three pillars for me to feel balanced was already a massive, massive, massive step.
So you mentioned it being triggered into a midlife crisis. Did that occur while you were off, or did that occur after you had gone back to work?
I think it all happened at once, right? It's
Okay.
hard for me because this burnout happened when I was 41. My kids happened to be 13 at the time, which is, they were hitting puberty.
Hmm.
It the time I hit puberty as well back a little while back, and I think there's some kind of synchronicity going on there that it just happened at that time.
Hmm.
Um, and so is it perimenopause that, made my, depressive episode worse? Is it midlife crisis? I don't know exactly what to call it, but it all happened at once, and it was like this big thing that hit me in the
Hmm.
face, and I had to recoil from. So I went through this journey of self-discovery in a way that I realized I hadn't done before. I'd never really done. I had done some, 2 years of analytic therapy, and it's all helpful and useful to understand where we come from and how things come to be in our own development, but it hadn't solved anything really. And
Hmm.
so I went back to this inward journey and started paying much more attention to what was going on inside than I had ever before. And that was quite the revelation, quite the
Hmm.
journey with ups and downs,
Yeah.
but fascinating. Yeah.
So, what did that journey look like? The ups and downs.
It looked like um, reappropriating my own body. I was completely disconnected. The first thing I did was getting a tattoo, which I had thought about for years and years and years and never dared to do. And then I did it. And the tattoo artist said, "Are you sure? Because most people start with something small. And I have one that goes all the way here."
Oh, you did
Now,
half sleeve. Atta girl, go big or go home.
I exactly go big or go home. I had waited so long to do it. But that was symbolic. It was about appropriating my own body. It was about, my dad had always been virulently opposed to tattoos, and it was a way of cutting the cord at 40 plus, which sounds silly, but it was still a step I needed to take. It wasn't the only reason, but it definitely was in the plus column. Um, and it continued. I needed to really go inwards and learn to articulate, identify first and articulate second what I needed, what I wanted, and what my limits were. I had never gone into that reflection so intentionally.
Hmm.
And that's the reflection, that's the train of thoughts that led me to non-monogamy because I wanted to explore freedom. Like it's almost the most radical kind of freedom because our society is so centered around the couple and what a couple is supposed to be
Hmm.
that I had never even questioned it. You know, I went to school, I met a boy, I moved in together, got engaged, got married, had kids, bought a house.
Yeah.
It was this escalator, and I never ever once questioned it.
Hmm.
And then I found myself in my 40s at the bottom of my couch and then crawling out of it, um, and realizing maybe that's not what I want, or maybe it is, maybe that's not all that I want. And I want to be able to dig in and figure out exactly what I need, what I want, and where my limits are. And that was the beginning of that journey to redefine what my relationship should be like.
Hmm. So, what did that conversation look like? Like, I'm trying to picture someone walking up to their husband and saying, "Hey, honey, what do you think about?"
No, so it came in stages, already right in the middle of COVID when we were all cooped in inside the house. Some tension had arisen, and we had talked about the fact that okay, maybe we 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 were already sleeping in different bedrooms anyways because we just sleep better, and we thought actually, my husband brought it up saying, if one day on one of your trips something happened, I wouldn't hold it against you. We left it at that, but the door was open, right? We never thought it at that time. We didn't think it through. Like, what
Mhm.
does that mean? But the door was open, and nothing happened for 3 years. And 3 years later, when I was looking for what I needed to find my balance, I reopened that door, um, and started reading up on polyamory, ethical non-monogamy, and everything. And I mean, there's a whole dictionary of terms
Hmm.
uh, that are specific to thinking through all of these concepts. And it was really interesting to learn about that because philosophically, I think it's a question we should all ask. I don't believe non-monogamy is for everyone. That is
Hmm.
certainly not what I'm preaching, but I do think we should all question the model we're in because the feelings that we get from just imagining our partner with someone else are very revealing about
Hmm.
ourselves. Am I jealous? Am I possessive? Am I insecure? What's in there? What does that mean? What does it trigger? And that reflection is very rich, but that takes you really up and down because it can be sometimes quite violent reactions because we were not conditioned for that. We were conditioned for if you love me, you're going to be jealous. If you love me, you're not going to want someone else. If you love me,
Hmm.
all of that is not true. It doesn't have to be true. But I had never thought about it. I had never questioned it, and neither had my husband. So we went through that together, and it was quite interesting. And to come back to your question, how did I bring it up? During some vacation, we needed a heart to heart, and I broke the news to him that that was what I wanted. Um, it felt like a shock to him, and he
Hmm.
kind of broke down for a little while, but I had to hand it to him within 36 hours. He said, "You know what? I think you're right. I think we need to do this. We need to explore. Let's do it. I'm in." And it could have gone really, really wrong, but I got
Yeah.
lucky.
So, well, I mean, the fact that he opened the door years earlier, you know, helped.
Yes.
I wonder because you're in France, correct?
Yes.
European outlook on marriage and monogamy tends to be very different than North American,
Hmm. I
British.
I know that's the image,
Mhm.
especially France, ménage à trois, blah blah blah. But I think that's not true. I think France is a very traditional country. Um,
Okay.
and and by the way, he's not French, he's American from the
Oh,
South. Yes.
oh, which makes it more surprising.
Right. And yeah, no, it's just something we wanted to explore. And there is the intellectual exploration. That's the one I encourage everyone to have. And then there's the actual, let's practice this and see what happens. That one I would recommend to go cautiously about.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I think we were curious as to what it could bring us. And it's going to sound crazy and very counterintuitive, but it brought us closer than ever because in order for that to work, we had to talk on a level of depth that we had never had before, that we had never needed before. We
Mhm.
had to be willing to bare our souls to each other, to admit what hurt, to really show vulnerabilities, to look contradictions in the face. I want you to be happy, even if that means meeting somebody else. But, ooh, that hurts actually. Or, oh, this person, for some reason, I'm okay with, but that one, I can't tell you why, but I feel uncomfortable. Why? I don't know. It's not always rational. Having to admit those vulnerabilities really helped us get much closer together than we had ever been.
Mhm. And I assume there are rules put in place as to what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, like not bringing them into the family home or introducing them to the children or that sort of thing.
Yes, for us, those were exactly the rules. Nobody comes home. Home is the sacred space that we share. And we have kids, so we're not bringing anyone into the kids' lives. Like I said, they were 13 at the time. We did tell the kids, so they knew, just we were afraid that they would, I don't know, hear a phone call or someone who knows someone would see one of us with somebody else. And the
Mm,
last thing we wanted is for them to feel that something underhanded was going on and that would jeopardize the marriage and their family unit. So we were very transparent with them. They were the coolest.
Really?
It's a really big deal to tell them, Daddy and I decided that we didn't want to be monogamous anymore. And we were at the dinner table and they thought, oh, okay. So we asked, what do you think about it? And my daughter said, she said, so I have twins, a boy and a girl. She asked a very smart question. She said, what if a relationship becomes serious? And so that took us into the whole discussion about what does serious mean? You can love someone very much, but what we're learning is you can learn someone very much and not want to move in, not want to get married, not want to have kids with them.
Hmm.
Uh, so that's our intention is to stay married, to stay together, keep the family together. Um, but we do allow ourselves to have feelings for someone else if that comes. My son said something really smart. I was really proud. He said, I think people who cheat on each other are people who need the same thing as you two, but they're not honest about it and they don't communicate well. And I thought, "Fuck,
Wow.
my job is done. He gets it."
Your children are very emotionally intelligent.
Yeah, they were very receptive. I think it was a good time. It was very clear for them. It was okay. This is the way they are. They're happy.
Hmm.
And they could tell we were happy. So it didn't concern them or shock them or anything. And we told them, we are not hiding it. We're not making it a secret. You can talk to your friends about whatever you want. Just know that some people might have an adverse reaction to it
Hmm.
because it can come in conflict with certain values, certain principles. Um, as far as I know, they've never come across any adverse reaction.
Hmm.
It's been
I
good.
think probably the most important thing to them was that the family stays together.
Absolutely.
Everything else can be dealt with.
Yeah, and we never brought it into their lives, right? So,
Hmm.
I mean, they did see us go out or whatever, but they never cared to ask questions. And we asked them, "Do you want to know?" They said, "Meh, not really."
Hmm.
And it really was a meh.
Yeah. They don't want to
So
know about their
brought
parents'
it in.
sex lives at all.
Yeah, I don't care. Like, you're happy, I'm good.
Yeah.
That was about the extent of it.
Wow. So I believe you mentioned you and your husband are not practicing polyamory at all. You have individual relationships, but
Yeah,
not
I think
no
it still
shared.
qualifies, right? It still qualifies as polyamory, but we don't bring people into each other's lives.
Okay.
Um, and to tell you the truth, for the past year or so, we haven't practiced at all. We haven't been dating for different reasons. But even the couple of years before that, we had relationships. But yeah, it was not about creating a throuple, or it was specifically about having our individual things and not about having that together. So
Right.
always met separately. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I often will see stories of couples who are choosing to explore outside their marriage, but doing it as a couple
Hmm.
and looking for a third. And I mean, I grew up quite sheltered. So this was not something that was ever talked about. Um, but I would learn just probably last year that when it's a couple looking for another woman to join them, she's called a unicorn.
You're looking for a unicorn. Yeah.
Yeah, which I did. I thought, you know what? That's
Frowned upon. Yeah.
fantastic.
But it's actually quite frowned upon in the community, is my understanding, because it can be quite objectifying that
Hmm.
third person can easily be a third wheel or have less power. Because another thing you really explore when you talk non-monogamy is the power dynamics
Hmm.
between the couples. My husband and I never did that, but there are plenty of couples that will grant each other a veto right and say, no, you cannot see that person. And so they have to break up the relationship, which can be quite hurtful if you've
Hmm.
grown attached, which is also horrible for the other person because then their relationship is damaged or destroyed
Hmm.
by someone who's not in it technically. And
Right.
so all of these power dynamics are really fascinating to explore and to discover. Um, including in your own relationships. I don't think we are quite aware of all of the power dynamics that are at stake in
Mhm.
any given couple.
Yeah. I would assume, though, someone, say you were to meet someone, you're upfront about the fact that you're married, you're non-monogamous, your husband's fully aware. As the party coming into this, would you not assume that they understand that there is a risk because the marriage is always going to come first?
Yes, I think it's a common challenge for a lot of those relationships, especially at the beginning. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
a brand new relationship compared to a 20-year relationship, of course, it doesn't quite compare. We have kids together, we have a home together.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so it's very important to be upfront. It's very important to continuously talk about what's going on and the power or if a rule changes to make sure the person is informed and has as much of a voice as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that will vary a lot. I've met people who, even though they meet people separately, they do bring them home, and so they get to meet. They're called kitchen table poly, which I love. I love the name because they just meet at the kitchen table at
Yeah.
breakfast. And I think that's very cute. And so some people do build these kind of extended families, even though not everybody is in a relationship with everybody, they do
Mm-hmm.
know each other. And so they build that way. I never got to this point. My husband and I never really wanted to. It just didn't come up.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe because the relationships we formed weren't quite serious enough, as my daughter would say. I don't know. Some of them did become quite serious, but never to that extent. Again, it's what's fascinating about that is you get to write your own rules
Yeah.
with each relationship, the main one, the satellite ones, the do you want to make them all equal? Is there hierarchy? All of that is going to vary from one couple to another and also through time. It will evolve. Because if you imagine having quote unquote secondary relationship for years on end, at one point does it stop being secondary?
Mm-hmm.
At one point, if you had to choose, would you be unable to? It does get to that point. And so it's a fascinating world and a lot of literature that has been written on it because I think it's a small percentage of the population that practices polyamory or ethical non-monogamy, but there is a lot of literature about it because it triggers all of these questions.
Right, right. And I think because it's so outside the norm of what we were brought up with, nowadays with I find the younger people, the Gen Zs, what's the one beneath them? Gen Alpha? I don't
Alpha, yeah.
even know. They tend to be very fluid
Yes.
in both their sexuality and their sexual identity. So I think for them, this isn't really out there that much. I I know many, many people in that age group who I'd say probably more identify as non-straight than straight from
Hmm.
the ones that I've met. Doesn't mean necessarily that they're going to be pursuing that, but that's how they feel and that's perfectly fine. And they're much more willing to explore what that looks like in
Yes.
those generations than in my generation, your generation. I'm not sure how much younger you are than me, so we might be too different. Um, Even millennials, especially the older millennials, they're too close to the X's to
I'm older millennial. I'm like
are
the
you?
last.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
But
All right.
um, I was born in 81. But yeah, I completely agree with you. The more it goes and the more it is younger people, but I think the older ones are catching up with
Mm-hmm.
time, becoming more and more aware that sexuality, gender identity, and even relationships exist on spectrums and are not binary.
Mm-hmm.
It's not black or white. It's not. completely exclusive or no relationship at all. There are different ways of going about things.
Hmm.
Um, and I find that very refreshing and absolutely terrifying at the same time because I think now I grew up with my dad always saying, being 20 and knowing what I know now, what I wouldn't do. And I think,
Yeah.
sometimes I've thought, oh my God, if I had known all of this when I was 20, things would have been really different. And
Hmm.
sometimes I think, having my children, building my career, all of these things, if I had done this while knowing all of the options that were actually available to me, what would have happened? It seems a little dizzying. So
Hmm.
personally, I'm glad it happened in stages. But I agree with you, the younger generations, I mean, like I said, my kids, they thought that's their norm, then that's fine. It doesn't have
Hmm.
to be the norm. And I
Yeah.
find that remarkable.
Yeah. And I just picture with all the options that are out there, I almost wonder if that doesn't make it more difficult for the young people to enter into and maintain relationships.
It, it's a real question. Does it make it more difficult or does it make it easier because they don't have to fit into a mold that doesn't correspond to them? They
Yeah.
can build a relationship on their own terms.
Hmm.
It does
Yeah.
require for them to meet someone who's on the same, emotional maturity level and who wants similar things, and might be harder to find someone who wants the same thing.
Hmm.
Uh, but I do think it means they don't have to shoehorn themselves into a model that wasn't made for them.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
same thing happens with the increased awareness about that neurodiversity, right?
Hmm.
Where we are realizing more and more that maybe it's not just people that need to adapt to society, maybe society also needs to adapt to individuals. And I think it's the same thing is happening there, that if strict traditional exclusive monogamy is not for me, there are ways I can work around that to still build, rather than be a serial monogamist with serial divorces. There are
Yeah.
ways to build something that works for me. I think that's extremely lucky for those who have that knowledge early on.
Yeah. Yeah. I think back to when, I don't know about you, but I think back to when I was in my 20s and I was so jealous of
You mean
any,
possessive of your partner?
oh my God, like just ridiculous. And I think to myself, if someone had mentioned this then, I would have lost it. Now I can look at it being, my mid 50s and be like, it's not for me, but I can understand how it could be for some people and how they can make it work with the relationships that they currently have. But back then, oh my God, I visualize myself and I would have just lost it.
But
So
it's fascinating. The fact is, you didn't ask yourself the question back then, but I'm guessing with the work that you do, you did ask yourself the question a bit later on, that what does it say about me that I'm this jealous? And is it
yeah.
rooted in insecurity? Is it rooted in just pure conditioning that I was told that that was the only way I should love someone? Or there's data to dig in and learn about yourself in that
Mhm.
very jealousy.
Yeah. I blame media.
There you go. You were
All
told that being passionate meant being jealous.
well,
They're all
all the rom-coms, right? All the rom-coms from the 80s and 90s that I grew up with, I blame them. Anyways, so your podcast called
Hmm.
Censorship. So what exactly is your podcast about?
So the podcast, so it's censorship with an S. It's important, like making sense. The podcast stemmed from it's not going to sound logical at first sight. The podcast stems from the same idea as redefining relationships. You can redefine success. We are told what a couple should be, and we are told what success should be. It should be a diploma, a job, good money, a big title, maybe a company car, at least here in Europe, that's pretty common. These are the milestones of success. And as I was going through life, working on redefining um, what my marriage should be, I met people. I was also, if you remember, I was also rebuilding this social pillar of my life.
Hmm.
And so I was meeting new people, and I came across amazing stories of people that gave up big jobs to start um, an association or an organization that would give workshops on consent. And I thought, this is a story worth telling. And I met people like that. Recently, I interviewed someone who came from a really, really poor background. He'd known, moving houses all the time and known real poverty. He somehow made a fortune because he was really good at coding. He taught himself
Oh,
coding.
okay.
He made a fortune, sold it all, made sure he was secure for the rest of his life, and used the rest of the money to start an LGBTQIA plus foundation where he supports people in finding jobs and finding accommodation, in getting their surgeries for the trans folks. And it's amazing. These stories, they were so inspiring, and I just want to be able to tell them. And the more I do, the more I get to have those conversations, and it's super exciting. And it's very inspiring for myself as well, because like I said, I love my job, but I've been doing it for a long time.
Hmm.
And this is a great way for me to feed this inspiration, to feed the creativity and renewal of that energy that I find in those conversations. It's been a great ride and really a lot of fun.
And how many seasons do you have of it now?
It's only been 3 months, so I have 8 or 9 episodes out,
Okay.
and half of them are in French, half of them are in English. So I publish an episode every other week,
Okay.
time in French, one time in English. So Canada, great. You too, you have both languages in the country. Now, half of them are in English because that's my life, right? I'm married to an American. I work in English.
Hmm.
I couldn't pick. I couldn't pick between the two languages. So from a marketing standpoint, it's a bad idea because it's essentially two very different markets with a very small podcast. But it's both languages are too much a part of my life for me to pick one. So I do
Hmm.
both.
Oh, very nice. So you talked about the one gentleman who made his money coding. What were some of the other guests that you've had?
The latest episode I published was an experienced designer, and her name is Jock, and she's from the UK, and she is an academic and a consultant, and organizes her own festival, like alternative music festival in the UK every summer, and she has really brought this notion of experience design into an art form and an academic field. And it's really fascinating to hear how deep she goes into the neuroscience aspect um, of behaviors, and how she uses that knowledge to either do client work or organize her own events, and really guide people. And her childhood dream was to create long-lasting memories for millions of people, and that's what she's doing. And it's really cool.
Oh,
And
that's so
she's a
nice.
fantastic guest. Yes.
Wow, wow. I'm gonna have to tune in.
Yes. I recommend it. Censorship.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where can people find the podcast if they want to hear it?
The podcast is on all the main platforms, Apple, Spotify, Deezer, YouTube, and YouTube Music. And what's the last one? Amazon. So all there. Otherwise, there's the I have a very basic website with the all of the different links, and it's censorshippodcast.com
With an S.
with an S, like Stephanie.
Nice, nice. And where else can people find you?
I'm on LinkedIn. Um, there is the censorship page or my page, Stephanie Dubois. And I'm on Instagram, also censorship_podcast is my handle. And
Perfect.
we
And
have the Instagram
I'll be
account.
sending you a collab invite
Yes.
so people will be able to find you through my page as well. So amazing. Was there anything I missed that you wanted to talk about?
I don't think so. I've enjoyed this. This was fun.
It was so interesting. Like I said before we started talking, I learn new things all the time.
Great.
It's amazing. It's amazing. So I want to thank you so much for joining me. For people listening or watching, all of the links for Stephanie's podcast, as well as to reach her online, will be in the show notes. And this will be released on YouTube. You can also find us on Apple, on Spotify, on Amazon, and we stream to Facebook and share on Instagram as well, and LinkedIn. So we're kind of everywhere. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure. And everybody check out her podcast. I'm looking forward to hearing from these people. It sounds like they're really doing something to make a change.
I love it. Thank you so much for having me.